Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and fellow attendees of the Australian Conference of Economies, good morning and welcome to this presentation on the topic of how such taxes can have wide-ranging effects on public health, economic growth, and government revenue. So let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the impact of consumption taxes on consumer and producer welfare. Initially, in a market without taxes, there is an equitable market where the supply demand curve intersect. So the green part over here represents the consumer surplus, and the red part over here represents the producer surplus. So if the government imposes a tax, which is the blue part right here, the supply curve will shift to the left side. This is because the tax raises the cost of production for producer, and higher costs mean producers are willing to supply fewer units at each price level, resulting in a reduced quantity supply in the market. So at the same time, as consumers pay a higher price because of the tax, their consumer surplus, which represents the difference between that they are willing to pay and what they are actually paying, will decrease. So some consumer may choose not to buy the product at the higher price. As we can see, both of their welfare has reduced. So the consumption taxes will generate dead weight loss. The dead weight loss wealth represents the overall loss of economic welfare in a market due to the tax. It occurs because some transaction that would have occurred without the tax no longer happen due to the higher price. And on the positive side, the government collects tax revenue. These tax revenue can use for public services and also government programs. Next, I'll be talking about the tariff on imports. So the tariff on imports, we also can start with a standard supply and demand diagram. Now, a tariff means a tax that is imposed on imported goods by import price. And it shifts the supply curve upward by the amount of tariff. For example, if the government imposed tariff, which causes higher price for imported goods, consumer surplus will decrease because consumers now pay more for the same quantity of imports. So they will lose some welfare. So the consumer surplus is normally this big triangle right here. And after the government imposed the tariff, which is this part, the triangle becomes smaller. As you can see. Yeah, so the green part represents tariff revenue, and the gray part represents dead weight loss. On the other hand, domestic producer, all right, will benefit from the tariff because they can sell their goods at higher price. These increase their producer surplus. Okay, normally the producer surplus is just a small triangle right here, and after the tariff has been imposed, the triangle become bigger because they can sell their goods at a higher price. So it is good for the producer. So now I'll be talking about the difference between dead weight loss in consumption tax and tariff. So in the case of a consumption tax, the dead weight loss is caused by reduced consumption due to the higher price, leading to less quantity demanded and supply in the market, and it primarily affects the domestic transactions and may not necessarily reduce the quantity traded in international market. Conversely, in the case of a tariff, the dead weight loss is caused by the reduction in the quantity of imports due to the higher price, right, which reduces international trade. So the tariff directly affects international trade by reducing the quantity of, imports. All right, moving to the next one, I'll be talking about the impact of consumption taxes on the macroeconomy using AD and AS model. So aggregate demand represents the total demand for goods and services in an economy, while aggregate supply represents the total quantity of goods and services that producers in an economy are willing and able to supply at different price levels. So for example, when consumers pay more in taxes, they have less income available for spending. This leads to a decrease in consumption expenditure. So a decrease in consumption due to higher taxes will shift the aggregate demand curve to the left side. This is because consumption is a significant component of aggregate demand, and a reduction in consumer spending reduces the overall demand for goods and services in the economy. While therefore, the decrease in consumption can also trigger a multiplier. So when consumer spend less, businesses earn less revenue, which can lead to reduced hiring and investment, by businesses. This can further decrease overall economic activity and contributing a larger decrease in AD. With the consumption taxes typically do not have a direct impact on the aggregate supply curve in the short term, because aggregate supply represents the productive capacity of the economy, and taxes on consumption do not change the economy's productive capabilities. Furthermore, a tax that improves people's health can have potential long-term benefit for the economy. However, a tax that improves people's health is likely to shift the aggregate supply curve to the right, indicating an increase in the economy's productive capacity. This shift represents an improvement in the potential output of the economy over the long term. For example, healthier individuals tend to be more productive at work, right? They have lower absenteeism rates, higher labor force participation, and increase on the job efficiency. This leads to higher levels of output for the same amount of input. Moreover, a healthier population can also result in positive externalities, such as reduced disease transmission rates and improved public health. This can lead to a decrease in healthcare related costs. So, if the healthcare cost is reduced due to the improved health, may lead to increased disposable income for consumers. This could potentially boost consumer spending on other goods and services. Well, this shifts the aggregate demand curve to the right side. So in this final part, I'm going to talk about the health and economic effects of a fat tax using directed acyclic graph. So at the starting point of the graph, I introduce the fat tax policy. This is the primary intervention we are analyzing. And this is the cause of changes in subsequent variables. Moving from left to right, we see an arrow from the fat tax leading to changes in the consumption behavior of consuming unhealthy food. The arrow implies that the tax impacts consumer behavior, making unhealthy foods more expensive and potentially reducing their consumption. Another set of arrows extend from consumption behavior to health outcome. Those indicate a direct causal relationship, suggesting that changes in dietary habits influence health outcome. Consuming fewer unhealthy foods is linked to improve public health, potentially reducing health issues like obesity, diabetes, and other diet-related conditions. Additionally, there is an arrow from health outcome leading to economic growth. This arrow represents an indirect impact of the fat tax on economic growth. Changes in dietary patterns can affect healthcare costs, labor force participation, and productivity, which in turn can influence the overall economic performance of a region or a country. Well, now I introduce a potential confounder, which is public health campaigns, represented by an arrow that connects with both the fat tax and health outcome. This signifies that public health campaigns aim at improving dietary choices and promoting healthy lifestyles could influence both the implementation of the fat tax and the health outcomes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is all for my presentation. Thank you all for listening, and I hope that you all are interested in this economic related topic